Because when NWA hit, even brothers who didn't think they was gangsters started acting like it. If you want to trace the origin of gangster rap, it goes back to NWA.
That's right. That's right.
Because they were the first rap group to sell 1 million albums with no airplay whatsoever from America's radio stations. So when they did that, all the brothers in the hood said, dang, this Public Enemy stuff ain't the way to go. You see that? This positive rap, that ain't what's kicking our head. You know, self-destruction, nah. You got to be a gangster. And that's when everybody went over to the gangster rap. Not because they lived it, but because they saw it as a way to get rich. And the problem is, they don't tell our children that this is not real life. Ja Rule ain't telling children that his father is a medical doctor. Okay? Jay-Z ain't telling children that he ain't sell drugs in Brooklyn. He sold drugs right down here in the Eastern Maryland.
Right. That's right.
Okay? They're not telling the children the truth. They're living fairy tales, but the children think it's the real life. And brothers, let us be clear. Lil Wayne is only the role model because you choose not to be. See if the sister in the hallway wants to see. But we want to blame young Jeezy and everybody else talking about something, why they not role models. They're not. They shouldn't be.
Right.
When Charles Barkley said, I'm not a role model, when Larry Johnson put on his dress and said he's not a role model, I'm glad he said that.
Right.
But what you need to understand, I'm glad they said that. They should not be our role models.
That's right.
Because a role model doesn't just teach you how to act. They teach you how to think. Do you want your son thinking like a Charles Barkley, who for whatever reason feels the need to condemn black people every time there's a racial issue that's raised? But your daughter is all over the internet taking every booty short pic she can possibly find. And you telling us about how we need to be.
Right.
We can get home and get to her. Find out about her thirsty ass all over the internet. Telling us how to live.
Right.
You see? And speaking of the black man in the skirt, what was up with the black man in the skirt? I think Larry Johnson was the first one to put on the skirt.
Grandmama. Yeah.
We got another sister right here. If we can get a seat for her.
Yeah.
Okay. Larry Johnson put on the skirt. Then they made Wesley Snipes put on the skirt. Did Ving Rhames put on the skirt? Yeah. Ving Rhames put on the skirt. Jamie Foxx. Kevin Hart put on the skirt. Jamie Foxx put on the skirt. LeBron. I thought LeBron wasn't going to do it. LeBron put on the skirt in a way. What is this American infatuation with a black man dressed up like a female? It is symbolic emasculation. It is symbolic psychological castration to make you comfortable in the image of a woman. So when we start trying to influence you to actually conduct your personal life like a woman, there will be little resistance. Remember now, military science. Before you fight the war, you must soften up the victim. Military science. Before you start the extermination campaign, you must first prepare the minds of the public. Anybody see the Purge movie?
Yes, sir.
Purge 2? You think that's so far away from happening?
No, sir. Right on the way.
And what did you notice most about the Purge? What I like most about the movie, there was a scene in there where they found the computer of the people who were being murdered. And what did they find out about the murders? They were not random at all. That they were being orchestrated by the police. Y'all remember that scene? They said, wait a minute, look at the way the murders, that's what's going on in the neighborhood now. We need to do research on the murder sites and the murders, and you're going to start noticing certain patterns. And one of the patterns we need to look for when we do the research is I want to see blood type patterns. So take Baltimore. Look at all the brothers who was murdered. Put them in the zip code, get their blood type, and see what type of patterns we got rolling on there. Get their disease type and see what type of patterns we got going on. One of the biggest findings that we're going to find in the next 10 to 20 years is that half the black men being murdered are not being murdered by black men, and that they're being murdered for organs.
That's right.
And that they're being murdered for organs. I have no doubt it's going to come out soon. All the brothers we've been watching in the newspaper, Final Call, been carrying them because CNN ain't. Notice how CNN hasn't put a single story of any of the black males who've been murdered who were found missing all their organs. Not one time Wolf Blitzer. Not one time Anderson Cooper. Not one time Don Lemon have you done a story, just one, on a murdered black man stuffed with newspaper, no organs on the inside. And what I keep telling y'all about organs, you're the mother and fathers of civilization. So if somebody needs a transplant, you always go with the original. And that's you. If I gotta take a risk on a body part, give me a black one. I remember when Governor Casey of Pennsylvania was a racist governor, by the way, who actually wanted to shut my high school down when I was in the 10th grade. I went to Scotland School in Chambersburg, PA. He went to residential school. He wanted to shut it down when I was in the 10th grade because it was overwhelmingly black and because he didn't want to pay for a school that was open for white. The children of white veterans have become predominantly operating with the children of black veterans. He wanted to shut it down. So it lasted a couple years, but then Governor Riddell came in and he shut it down. When Casey had to get his surgery, and this was covered all over the news, guess what? They jumped him to the front of the line because he was a politician, so his life was more important than everybody else. So he got jumped to the front of the line and they gave him a black heart. Look at that. A racist white man was given a black person's organ to live longer, to be more racist. And that's why I tell you all, if you have a organ donor driver's license, you might want to reverse that. Because all the organ donors are in a computer. Yes, sir. Okay? And right next to that is all your organs, your blood type, their size, and everything else. And you're going to say, I don't believe that, Dr. Johnson. Well, guess what? I know for a fact. Remember now, I know doctors and I know pathologists. I know a little bit of everybody. And they say, Doc, believe it or not, as a patient, as you have a patient who you're responsible for, as they come into your office and you take all those tests are designed to define every organ in the body. And they said you even get to a point where you actually label the organs. So all of us have our body parts in a system. Everything about you is on a computer if you've ever been to a modern doctor and had a physical evaluation where they took blood and urine from you. They know everything about your organs. Now, you didn't sign up to be an organ donor on your driver's license. Somebody need a heart, and it just so happens that you got the same blood type and the same specifications. And that person got $1 million to pay for it. Tomorrow you slip into a manhole. But they're going to say you was walking drunk. Tomorrow you get hit by a car coming out the gas station. They're going to say reckless driving. That was an orchestrated assassination for a black organ. No less than 5,000 black people go missing every year in America. It's impossible for that number to stay at the same rate if it's purely coincidental. We have no idea of what is being done. But in academia, those of us who have our doctorates and our masters, and even those of you working on your back, what do you know about academia? In academia, if you know something to be true, but you cannot find a white person who wrote it somewhere, it cannot be introduced as evidence. Are y'all following me? This is how academia works. This is how they control the truth. So for example, when I was working on my doctoral dissertation, I originally wanted to do my doctoral dissertation on the misdiagnosis of ADHD and the prescription of Ritalin for black boys in the inner city. Misdiagnosis of ADHD and the over-medicalization of black boys, right? They looked at me like I was crazy. And then they said, well, in order for you to do that, you're going to have to find enough research to show that, in fact, black boys are being overdiagnosed as ADHD and overprescribed medicine. Now, here I am, 15 years as a school psychologist. I work with them every day. They parents, thousands of them, even work in white schools where I can see the differential diagnostic rate. And I'm being told that you cannot do your thesis on that unless you can find enough research. And let me objectively define what research is. Let me make it real simple. When they say you need research, you got to find white people who agree with your position before you can put it out to the world. Right. You know what I mean? And I get a lot of black scholars, they'll call me up, they say, Dr. Johnson, we read your book, Psychoacademic Holocaust. And for those of you who don't have a copy, you'll be able to get it when we're done here today. You need to do some research on that. So that way they can know that what you're saying is true. I said two things. I'm not the least bit interested and finding any white person who wrote in some journal on special ed, or wrote on some journal on psychopathology, or wrote in some journal on child development to corroborate what I said. Truth is consistent.
That's right.
If anything I say is false, it will be exposed sooner or later. That's the beauty of truth. It is self-correcting. I do not need white folk to validate me, my position, my opinions, or what I live for.
That's right.
It's important we understand that. That's why you don't read about Wade Nobles. He's a great psychologist, but you don't read Wade Nobles when you study psychology in undergrad. You don't read Dr. Francis Cress Welsing when you study in psychiatry in undergrad. You don't get Naeem Akbar when you study in undergrad. You don't get Kenneth Clark when you're working on your sociology degree. These are great black social scientists, but why are they not included in your coursework? Why aren't their books required reading? Because they were not validated. They were not approved by white folk. Because remember, what makes research research? Because a group of people in that field sat down together. They call it peer-reviewed literature. You need to submit that book, Dr. Johnson, to the Journal of Special Education and let a group of our peers review your book and see whether or not we think it's credible. Y'all see here? This is a dictatorship of the truth. And that's the first thing white folks say. And some of y'all fell into it too. The conscious brothers. Believe it or not, as much as they hate white supremacy, they follow their whole protocol. First thing they say, where's your research at? You got any research on that, brother? Right. In other words, I got to go find some white folks to prove to a black man that what I'm saying is right. Truth is consistent. When you deal with your ancestors, you get an intuition. You cannot objectively prove that insight. We can see the effect of it, but you can't prove it. And that's why in African spirituality, one of the things that separate us from Eurocentric philosophy is we know there's a point beyond which the brain cannot take you. In European philosophy, everything can be reduced to observable interpretation and data. Everything can be analyzed. Not in African spirituality. The greatest of forces that run this universe can never be reduced to a lab study. Are y'all following me? Yes. That is love, that is power, that is divine energy, that is ancestors, that is your own soul, the essence of who we are. You can never study that. You can't taste it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't measure it. Love, you can't taste it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't measure it. Spirit, you can't taste it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't measure it. And most of all, from a Eurocentric standpoint, you can't sell it. And from that perspective, it's irrelevant. If we can't package it and put $1 on it, what good do we need with it? And that's another thing we need to change, black folk. Love and materialism. Black folk are in love with the ability to buy something. Because you think it's going to make you happy. So when you're home watching the commercials, you say, you know what, I want to get that car, I want to get those heels, I want to get that jacket, I want to buy that blender. You're not buying it because you want it or need it. Do you know what they're really selling you on that commercial? Happiness. You're buying it because you think the emotion that you saw the person on the commercial exude, you will exude once you have that product. That's why soon when we buy one car, we want to get another car. 2 weeks and you don't even like it no more. I can't believe this was the car I wanted. Because you didn't buy it for the car. You bought it for the emotion that the capitalists attached to it. Selling happiness. Same thing the pastor does. Yep. Yes, sir. He sells happiness. Not only does he sell happiness, he sells a happiness that you can't get till you die. Which for me is really crazy. Somebody asked me, Dr. Johnson, who has the most to gain? Excuse me, who has the most to lose if more black women get married? Who has the most to lose if more of our sisters got married? Sunday morning pastor. Because most churches are overwhelmingly single black females. And the pastor serves as the symbolic husband of all the single women. So the more black men fix our situation, and the more black women get married, the less women go to church every day. You threaten the preacher's control. That's why you have so few black men in church to begin with. Unless it's a mega church. Then it's bourgeois status. It don't matter at that point. Right. Okay? But in the pole church, he likes to keep it all female. Now what I want to do, because I see some parents here for the first time, I want to run through my expertise. So I gave you one book that you might want to read on AIDS, state origin, boy grades. The other one is Emerging Viruses. Anybody think that AIDS was made by nature? And this was written by a white scientist who's at the top of his profession by the name of Horowitz. I think the first name is Glenn. Excuse me, my young people, I want to get the sign-up sheet out of here and start passing it around, by the way, for the Parent Association. Raise your hand if you haven't signed up for the Parent Association yet. Okay, that's most of you. Brothers and sisters, one of the things I'm going to be doing for the new year is I'm going to be registering parents for the National Independent Black Parents Association. And so anybody got some paper and a pen where we can start that for me? If not, I might ask the one and all. You got it? Okay, my brother. And what I would like on that sign-up sheet, good brother, at the top, you can put NIBPA, or National Independent Black Parent Association. And we want 4 columns: name, phone number, email, and the 4th column will be comments. And the comment column is for either you can put the committee you want to be a part of, which I'm about to describe, or you can put, or you can put the city where you live. Because not everyone here is from Pasadena, okay, or Arnold, or Arundel. Okay, so I need you to put So I need you to put the city that you live in. So we need to start a parent association in your neighborhood also.
Doctor, you said name, email,
phone number,
and comments.
Okay? So 3 things go with comments. What committee, if you know. Your city, if it's different from the one you are in. So if you do not live in Pasadena, you need to put your city down. So just put Arnold or what have you. If you don't live in Maryland, you put your city and your state down. You might be visiting from Virginia. Put it. Okay? Because ultimately we got to organize the parents everywhere. And then the 3rd thing that could go in comments, along with where you live and what committee you want to belong to, is whether you want to be an organizer. If you want to help me, I need some of y'all to be the leaders to take the initiative. Put organizer so I'll know. And what committee you want to be an organizer of. Okay? The purpose of the National Independent Black Parent Association is to organize black people who care about our children. You don't have to have children. Let me say that again. You don't have to have children. All right? You just have to care about them. So we can fight for change with the city government and the school district until such time that we have a Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy where you live. Okay, so that's what it is. What are the 7 committees? In fact, let me break them down up here. And these are not in order. First committee, special ed. Okay? You sign up for the special ed committee, we're going to investigate special ed fraud and abuse in Pasadena, Maryland, okay? How many black kids are in special ed? How long are they in special ed? Are they part-timers or are they full-timers, or are they itinerant students who get pulled out for a period or 2? If they're itinerant, I'm not too worried about the itinerant children because they're only getting a small dose. That's all right. But if you tell me my child part-time, he's in special ed half the week, or full-time, he's in special ed all day long, that's an issue. Why is it an issue? Because special ed law gives every child with a disability the right to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. I need you to understand this right here. This is special ed summed up. If you have a disability, one of the 13, you're deaf or you're blind, or you have traumatic brain injury, you're mildly mentally retarded, so they say, emotionally disturbed, autistic, speech and language, traumatic brain injury. If you have one of the 13 disabilities, you have a right to a free. We know what free means, right? You don't pay. Your son needs extra help in reading. The principal said, well, we got a reading program, but it costs $50. I'm sorry, Miss Principal. Maybe you don't know special ed law. My son got a right to a free. So that $50 you need, guess where it's going to come from? That extra money you get by virtue of my son being in special ed in the first place. Parents of children with disabilities, don't you take money out your pocket. The school gets extra money for the special ed kids to pay for anything they need. Why you dig it in your pocket? So it must be free, and then it must be appropriate. This word is the subject of 99% of all special ed lawsuits and due process hearings. Appropriate. You know why? Because what's appropriate to the school district ain't appropriate to you. For the school district, your child being in special ed for 5 years, and he only improved his reading level by 1 grade, they think it's appropriate.
Right.
He did move. Shit, what you want us to do? Now you're saying my child ain't retarded. He go to school every day. He does his homework. He's been in special ed for 4 years. I think he should have advanced at least 3 grades. Because after all, special ed is individualized instruction. So if it's so individual, technically, he should be able to learn faster than the regular kids because it's individual. But let me tell y'all about individual. That so-called IED, individual education plan, I call it incarceration education plan. I call it inferior education plan. You know why? Because ain't nothing individual about it. Let me tell you what a lot of them do. Not all teachers, but a lot. Your son is in the 3rd grade. He got a reading disability. By law, they're supposed to sit down, invite you in, develop the IEP with you present. They don't do that. You know what they do? They go and find another 3rd grader who also got a learning disability. And they get his IEP in the computer, because it's all computerized, change the name, change the birth date, print it out, and when you show up for the IEP meeting, here you go, we already did it. You can just sign and go about your business. Rule number 1, you make them do it over in front of you. Excuse me, I was not a part of the development of this IEP. I do not appreciate you giving me something that was pre-made without my input. For all I know, that could be another child's IEP with my son's name on. Oh, we wouldn't dare. I've been teaching here for 30 years. I even taught you. You really think the special ed teacher does a separate IEP for every kid in there? You believe that? I know what the law says. I said, do you believe they do that? 3rd grade, reading disability, find somebody with it. 5th grade, mental retardation, find somebody with it. 6th grade, math disability, find somebody with it. 9th grade, autism, and for my autism parents, make sure they're not putting your child in the life skills class unless your child is autistic and mentally retarded / intellectual disability. Because autism ain't got nothing to do with intelligence. Autism is a social communications disability. The child is impaired in their ability to understand and communicate verbal and nonverbal language. It doesn't speak to how smart they are. But let me tell you what school districts do. If the budget is low and they don't want to go and pay another special ed teacher for your 1 child, y'all listening? We only got 1 autistic kid in this class. I am not about to pay $60,000 for another special ed teacher to teach that 1 boy. Now the law says you're supposed to, but the principals say, damn that. I'm using that money for the basketball team. We rank #1 in the city. Okay? So parents, that's when you got to let them know. You have my child, and you can ask these other children in the classroom, what is their classification? Because they look significantly lower than my child. And guess what? Even if they are autistic, if they are significantly lower than your child, that means that class is not appropriate for your child. and they have to find one that is. And what if they can't find one, Dr. Johnson? My kid is autistic in Pasadena, Maryland, and there's hardly any autistic kids, and they're telling me they don't know what to do. I know what they can do. They can take the special ed money that they get extra for your child and pay for individual instruction. That's what they can do. Or, if they don't hurry up, we're going to take them to due process with the State Department of Education for Maryland and make them pay for your child to go to a private school. Because the law says if the school district cannot properly meet the needs of a disabled child, you have to pay for the $30,000 a year private school.
Wow.
That's why I got to know your rights. But the rights ain't gonna fight for you. You got to fight for them. They're not gonna tell you none of this. You gotta let them know that my child can't be suspended more than 10 days out the whole school year because he's special ed. You gotta let them know that I'm a mandated member of the IEP team and you cannot move forward without me unless the school can prove that they tried to reach you and you never responded. But let me tell you what they do to be slick. If you're a difficult parent, they don't want you nowhere around. You know what they'll say? They'll say they called you 3 times and didn't get an answer. And you saying, y'all never called me. My voicemail is open. Which is why the law says they got to show that they sent 3 certified letters to your house that you signed and received. A phone call not good enough, but that's what they try to do now. I called the mom 3 times. She didn't call us back. We can move forward. And the law says if they cannot find you, if you're not willing to participate in your child's education, yes, they can do the IEP without you and move on. And then you have this least restrictive environment, which speaks to what? How much time your child spends in special ed. Because special education is what, y'all? Segregated education. This is a segregation law. Remember what I told y'all? When the Supreme Court outlawed school segregation, special ed brought it right back. That's why special ed is here. It ain't to help no kid who's struggling. How many of y'all kids struggling and been helped? It ain't for that. It's to justify why you got black kids in Pasadena, Maryland, who ain't got nothing wrong with them, but they sitting in the class for the mildly mentally retarded, or they sitting in the class for the learning disabled. Not because they got a learning problem, but because they are black. Special ed undone, Brown versus Board. Special ed undone, Brown versus Board. When did we get the largest expansion of white private schools in America? 1954 to 1974. White folks are snatching their kids out the inner city schools, and my child ain't going to school with them. And they started what? Private schools. To do what? Keep the schools all white. Because it's private, it don't take state money. We ain't got to have special ed. And we can charge, so your child can't come. But guess what? You can afford for your child to go to that private school. So you pay for your child to go to that private school, $15,000 a year, and guess what happens when he gets there? He gets a worse education than he got in the ghetto. Because everybody in the school is mad as hell that you can afford to pay the tuition. The reason why the tuition is $15,000 is to keep y'all out. And you got the audacity to not only be able to afford it, but to send 3 kids. Not only are they increasing the prices of private schools, what else are private schools doing to keep the black kids out? They're increasing the price. And guess what they're doing now? Up until 5 years ago, the average white private school wanted an IQ test to make sure your child wasn't disabled. Nothing wrong with that. I ain't got no problem with that because they don't have special ed. They don't get federal funding. I don't want no slow kids because it's going to cost me too much money to teach them, and I don't have the teachers for that. I agree. But guess what? The IQ test was not sufficient enough to keep the black kids out. So the white private schools got together and now they made up their own test. And now your child got to pass the super difficult test to get in. And if they don't pass it, I'm sorry, but it doesn't look like he's been properly prepared to join our school family. What did I tell y'all about tests? Why do they give our kids all these tests? There's only one purpose for testing in America. There's only one purpose for testing. And y'all can call the Baltimore Sun and tell them since they love writing articles about me. Okay? Call the Baltimore Sun and say, Dr. Umar Johnson said the only reason why they're giving black kids All these tests is so they can justify why our kids don't get no opportunity. Tell them that Dr. Johnson said that the test score is the new Jim Crow sign. Tell them that Dr. Johnson said that 50 years ago, if they didn't want black kids in Harvard, they would say that they would simply say, no blacks. Colored only. White only. That's not politically correct no more. So instead of a big sign that says no blacks, it's a big sign that says 1600 on your SAT or need not apply. It does the job the same way. Are y'all following me? The test sign is the new Jim Crow sign. They don't use letters. Excuse me. They don't use letters no more. They use numbers, which makes it look scientific. What's the relationship between your test score, your child's test score, and their ability to finish that particular program? It's almost zero. That's right. Some of y'all studying for med school, right? You studying for your MCAT? Let's say you aced the MCAT, or you failed the MCAT. What's the relationship between your MCAT score and your ability to finish med school? The correlation is almost a zero. What's the relationship between your LSAT score and your ability to graduate summa cum laude from Howard University Law School? It's almost a zero. What's your child's SAT score and the correlation with your child's ability to finish college? It's almost a zero. Wait a minute, Dr. Johnson, you're telling me that these tests have no predictive validity? That's exactly what I'm telling you. So why they give them? Because it's the new Jim Crow school sign. I want to keep blacks out. If I want to keep blacks out, I got to use something. So you create this test with a whole bunch of vocabulary words that you know the black kids never been exposed to. And you make the question so ambiguous that they don't know what the hell you asking. Here you go. Half of the black kids in Baltimore are below basic. Actually, half of them ain't. It might be almost half, but a good 10 to 15% of them black kids that's below basic, they're advanced. So why they scores say below basic? Because they don't read. And their parents don't make them read. And the teachers don't make them read. And the reason why they're below basic is for one reason only, and that's because they didn't understand what the question was asking. Numbers that lie. Sometimes the test score tell the truth. Sometimes the test score tell a lie. And then you got to look at how they evaluate the test score. Is it a normative score? Is it a criteria-based score? Because if you're telling me my child scored at the 90th percentile, that sounds good. Until I found out everybody flunked. So y'all see what I'm talking about? Your child scored at the 98th percentile for all the kids in Baltimore. Okay, but what did the kids in Baltimore do though? Even if the kids in Baltimore was all low, and my kid is at the top of the low, he's still low. So you gotta watch how you play with it. And you gotta watch teachers who don't like to give kids low grades because it shows they ain't been teaching all year. I know some principals who tell teachers that none of the kids are allowed to fail. I know some special ed teachers who will never give your child a low grade because if your child got a low grade, they got a disability.